Have you ever caught yourself saying, I know this isn't true, but I still feel like it is? Maybe it's after someone cancels on you, or you get a no on a pitch, or your brain is being self critical about some part of your body. And suddenly your brain starts whispering, see, you're not enough. You'll never get it. This won't work. You won't get there. That moment, the one where you spiral between what you know and what you feel, is the clearest sign that your narrative intelligence is running low. It's not that you lack confidence. It's that your mind is still operating in an old story. And today in this episode, we're going to fix that. I'm breaking down how to know your NQ, your narrative intelligence, how to know when it's low, and what it sounds like in your daily self-talk so that we can strengthen it, so you can stop replaying those old stories and start living a new one. Welcome to the Confidence Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Trish Blackwell. You're listening to episode 675. We're talking about narrative intelligence, or NQ for short, right? Emotional intelligence is EQ. Intelligence is IQ. This is NQ. This is a term that I have created in my coaching practice, used with my clients. You've heard it, kind of woven into conversations and different podcast episodes we've had when we're talking about mental management, story management, and your brain. And really, what is narrative intelligence? It's the confidence skill that nobody talks about yet. And many of you have bought my course, Narrative Intelligence, but I've not yet done an entire podcast. I have a course on this. I use this all the time and integrate it into my coaching, but I haven't yet done an entire dedicated episode to this. That's why we're doing it, because it's too important of a skill and a concept for you to not know it, understand it, and master it. And in today's coaching, we're going to talk about how to know, first and foremost, what is NQ, how to know your narrative intelligence, how to know if it's low, how to raise it, how to measure it. And this might end up becoming a two-part podcast. We're going to roll through what we got. We're going to talk about rigid thinking, cognitive flexibility, and a brief touch on my process that I teach in the course. More than anything, my goal for you is to know how to walk away and improve your NQ. When you improve your NQ, your ability to tell yourself a story, or change the story that you're stuck in between what you know cognitively and what you feel that is off base, how to start thinking in a way that serves you at the highest level rather than keeps you stuck in limitations. That is, I want you to know, this is your greatest tool. When you work your NQ, you change your life. So let's start at the very beginning. What is NQ? Narrative intelligence is the ability to change your inner story. I mean, if we were to just start there, that's what it is. It is your ability to change the inner story, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about a situation, whether it's about your potential or about others. It's the intelligence of flexible thinking, self-reflection, and emotional maturity. It's knowing also, in order to have flexible thinking, you have to know that your story needs a rewrite. You have to know that you're stuck in a story, again, either about yourself, about others, about a situation. And take it from me, if you don't know, if you're new to the show, welcome. Of all of the podcasts, maybe a friend sent this to you, maybe you were scrolling and you're like, I'm just going to pause here. I'm just so happy, however you landed here, that you landed here. But if you've been listening to the show and you already know a little bit my personality, I am type A. I am by nature an all or nothing thinker, which often leads to inflexible thinking. So please know that the reason I created this concept over my 12 plus years of coaching is because I needed this concept. My amazing husband has been one of the people who has encouraged me to be more flexible, flexible in my scheduling, flexible in my thinking. And when I was thinking about what does mental flexibility give you, it gives you freedom. It gives you peace. It gives you confidence. And more than anything, it gives you power. So the more flexible you are in your thinking, the higher your NQ can be. And flexible thinking also allows for you to take into others' consideration the opinions of others, the stories of others, what it feels like to walk in someone's shoes, why they might believe something so in direct contrast to what you believe. It makes you intellectually curious, open to self-reflection, open to being wrong, open to changing yourself, open to feedback without taking it as critical, being able to take it as constructive. This is the building foundation of emotional maturity. So shorter, again, simple definition of this is the ability to change your inner story about yourself. Now, why does it matter? I'm already leaning into this. Well, it matters for confidence because it's how you interpret and reframe the world. Your confidence grows at the rate that your narrative intelligence does. I'm going to say that again. Your confidence grows at the rate that your narrative intelligence does. Or again, don't worry yet if you're thinking, well, how am I going to train my NQ? I got you. I got you. That is literally the toolbox that I have of all those sources I teach in my coaching. So let's go ahead and start talk and transition to why. Why does it really matter? It matters because it shapes how you respond to failure, feedback, fear. It shapes entirely what you think is possible for you in the future. It determines whether you spiral or you self-coach in any situation. Maybe you're walking through infertility. Maybe you're walking in a season of loneliness, and maybe you're walking and struggling through some injury or illness or setback. Maybe you're just trying to figure yourself out in this next season of life. Your NQ will help you determine if you're spiraling or you self-coach and elevate, whether you limit yourself or you level up yourself. It's the key to letting go of old identities that no longer fit you, that no longer serve you, that maybe were never true about you at all. It's the key to to knowing that you have power and the ability to elevate your emotional regulation. It's the muscle that lets you pause before you react, before you spiral, and choose. It gives you the maturity to be able to interpret your story and to modify some of your emotional reaction to things. And when it comes to confidence, know this: confidence doesn't always mean that you feel good all the time. A confident person isn't always feeling amazing. They have a human brain. Human brains do human brain things, which means there is criticism, there is comparison, there is normal negativity that spirals. But a high narrative intelligence gives you the awareness to trust yourself to reinterpret what's happening, to launch into a reframe about what's happening. And the truth about just general identity when it comes to be a confident identity versus a limited, insecure, doubting identity is that most people aren't lacking belief. They're trapped in an outdated story without knowing it and without knowing how to write it. So I have a journal and reflection question for you wherever you're listening right now, whether you're driving in your car, walking on the treadmill, doing dishes. But what's the story that you keep telling yourself that's no longer true? What's the story that you keep telling yourself that's no longer true? Now let's dive in and go, how do I know if it's slow? You might already know because one might be a completely new term. And you might say, yes, what Trish, when you said you were an inflexible thinker and it's all, then you already know it's slow. But you have low narrative intelligence when you take everything personally. So you make situations mean something about your worth. You dramatize, you catastrophize. You replay conversations or rejections on loop. And so you crave and what that another way to think about that is you're absolutely craving control over how others see you. It might be that you're stuck in cycles of people pleasing and thinking, and you know you're people pleasing and you still believe you can change people's opinions of you. Or you also have low NQ if you get stuck in always or never thinking. Now, this was for me the huge pendulum in which I swung. I'm always going to be this way. I'm always going to get stuck. You always do this or I'll never. And Actually, again, a tribute to my husband. He is one who, when we were having conversations, we talked about how unfair it is in a relationship to say always and never. That spirals and corners somebody, and that's a whole nother conversation. That's a relationship coaching concept, but it brought my awareness to, I always mess this up. I never follow through these statements that are so grand and grandiose and limiting and box you in. It's absolute inflexible thinking. Maybe you also will know if you feel emotionally exhausted after small changes or after small challenges, your NQ is probably low. If your brain is burning energy by fighting stories over and over, stories about yourself, stories about your weight loss, stories about building your business, stories about the trust issues in your marriage, then instead of rewriting them and rebuilding them, you're constantly deconstructing them and analyzing, and you're stuck in this analysis phase, but not moving forward with anything. Your NQ is stuck. Or if you confuse facts with feelings, your NQ is low, meaning I feel behind becomes I am behind. It's when when we change the words and you say, instead of saying I feel insecure, I am secure, insecure. We have to stop identifying as our feelings. But that's narrative intelligence to know the difference. Low NQ, by the way, does not mean you're broken. It just means your story management system needs an upgrade. Now, if you don't know this yet about my background, again, many of you might know this, but the reason I am so fascinated by NQ, the reason why I created the concept itself and introduced it to the coaching world at large, is because I am at the heart of things a linguist. So in college, I majored in French, I minored in Spanish, was one class away from a double major. I'm passionate about languages. My secret pleasure as a child, as a little girl, was to read the dictionary as I ate my bowl of cereal at breakfast. I love words. I love words. And as a coach, as you know, I obviously specialize in confidence, but if I were to tell someone on the street what I do, in an elevator what I do, I help high achievers optimize their internal thinking so they can optimize their performance, whether it's as an elite athlete or a multi-million-dollar CEO or a attorney, doctor, a entrepreneur. I help people optimize the way their brain thinks. Because when you change the story and you change the words and you substitute one word for another, we change the internal language of our brain. When you change the internal language of a brain, you operate in the world fluently in another language. And so my linguistic background is why I love that there's a massive difference when we have word flexibility, right? The ability to substitute one word for another. If you do speak two languages and you didn't grow up, maybe two were spoken to you in the house, but most of us who are bilingual or trilingual or multilingual, you have to work to learn the other language. And when you're new to a new language and you're thinking, well, what's that word? Is this word for this colloquially? Is this a better use of this word, or is this? I was just in Mexico this weekend with a friend, and again, my Spanish, very, very conversational, very, very strong. However, there are a lot of vocab words I don't know. And so be able to ask someone, hey, I want to say this. And in this situation, in my brain, there's two words that work. Which one's better? There's linguistic and vocabulary flexibility when you're speaking and learning and integrating and using a new language. And it elevates the way you're thinking and the way you communicate and the way you show up and the way you interact. The same thing is happening when it comes to thinking about what you think about. This is meta thinking, right? Where we're thinking about what we think about, and we're asking yourself, is there a better way to talk about this? Are there better words that I can substitute so I can learn a higher level of internal language? My NQ is a new language, and it's going to feel hard at first, but it's the more I practice, the more I speak in a higher language and a higher NQ, the more fluent this new internal language, the more powerful, the more conversational, the better the story will be, because I will be more fluent in it. Now, let's talk very briefly about this. Another way to assess, do I have low NQ, If you can quickly recover from criticism or failure, your NQ is high. If you can easily separate your emotion from interpretation, your NQ is high. If you notice that you're not narrating, you catch yourself when you start narrating in extremes, meaning always and never, then your NQ is high. If you can easily rewrite your story after a setback. Now, my students in the College of Confidence, my mentorship program, or if you've purchased any programs from me or listened to this podcast for a while, you probably say, yes, I actually am becoming and have become better at the reframe. I have the awareness to catch my story and know when I start to need to change the story. Maybe you've been journaling, you've been practicing journaling at a consistent pattern in my journaling process that I teach, which you can get that in the show notes. You know that the whole daily journaling, the mental cleaning of our brain, starts with 5 gratitudes, a search for the negative, and then a reframe of that. So you are daily on a consistent basis reframing. So the more you reframe, you're literally every single day. This is why I'm obsessed with journaling. You are actively practicing rewriting your story. And if you know how to actively practice, you are practicing mental flexibility. You're practicing a mental dance of thinking about a story and thinking about different perspectives to something so that you can tell yourself what you want to think about a situation, a story, or a thought. When you can rewrite a story, the higher your narrative intelligence is. And do you believe growth is available to you? Then you have a high NQ. Your NQ is revealed not in what happens to you, but in how long you stay stuck in the story about it. So if high narrative intelligence is the ability to flexibly interpret, rewrite, and direct your inner story towards confidence, growth, and possibility, then low or poor narrative intelligence, NQ, shows up as being stuck in the unhelpful, rigid, or self-defeating storylines. So what do those look like? Let me briefly cover what some of those are. It's rigid thinking. Here's some of the core attributes of low narrative intelligence. It's seeing situations as black and white, right and wrong, inability to see things from multiple perspectives, getting stuck in this is just who I am, or this is how it always goes. Again, I'm telling you guys these were categories and attributes I was stuck in for decades. And as a result, I was suffering. I was internally suffering with my identity, with my purpose, with my confidence, with all the things. Or maybe it's the attributes of self-limiting stories. You're repeating inner narratives that reinforce doubt or victimhood, identifying with past failures instead of learning from them, using I always or never statements. Maybe your narrative intelligence attributes are emotional reactivity, letting emotions fully dictate the story. I feel anxious, so I must be anxious. Taking feedback and rejection as proof of inadequacy rather than data for growth. I was stuck in that attribute for a long time. And I hope you are encouraged when I tell you where I was stuck. Because if I was once stuck, but now I'm talking about it in past tense, y'all, I'm free. Y'all, I've grown. Why? Because I've been working my NQ. I train my NQ the same way I train my body. And if you don't know, I'm obsessed with fitness. I love working out. You can come hang out with me on Instagram, Trish_Blackwell. You will see that I'm a woman in her 40s who loves to be fit, right? And so I very clearly train my body. When I actually was at the beach in Mexico this week, I got stopped like a dozen times and they were like, "Oh, you work out." It was such a great compliment. But I wish somebody could see my brain and go, "Ooh, I see it. You must work out. You're joyful. You walk into a room, you start the dance party. You're willing to do things that scare you. You work your brain." It's very clear that I work my body, but I want people to know more important to me is that I work my brain. The more I work my brain, the easier it is to work my body, the easier it is to love my family, the easier it is to maximize and enjoy my life. The other categorical attributes of low narrative intelligence I wanted to make sure that I highlight is externalized control, which is believing that life happens to you instead of through you, or depending on others' approval or validation to feel confident. I was stuck. That was like 10 years of my life right there. viewing setbacks as signs of unfairness instead of opportunities to evolve the narrative. Or maybe you're stuck in narrative looping, replaying the same disempowering stories without editing them, without challenging them. You maybe are rehearsing what went wrong more versus than what I can learn. And so you're over identifying with old chapters, not realizing that you're the author of your own story here. I was stuck in narrative looping for 20 years, 15 years of that in an eating disorder and body dysmorphia. And then we already mentioned the category of low cognitive flexibility. So being resistant to alternative possibilities, being resistant to feedback, treating discomfort or confusion as danger instead of as an invitation to expand your perspective. And poor narrative intelligence, simply put, keeps people stuck in the wrong story. It's one that's written by fear, comparison, or past pain. High narrative intelligence will empower you to become the author again, which gives you the power to rewrite your old stories with awareness, compassion, and agency, and feel optimistic and confident about the stories that are to come. Now, there is a resource I wanted to point you to. I'm going to give you a couple things as we close out about what to do in order to improve your narrative intelligence. And if your feedback is that you want more episodes on this, please write a review, send me an email, let me know that you love this concept of narrative intelligence, and I will continue to deliver more confident content on it. But I'm going to give you a couple ways five ways to improve your NQ. Before I do that, there is a process that I teach my students. It's a 2-hour process to teach, so we don't have the time to go into it on the podcast here. I do want to tell you what it is. And if you want to go deeper into it, if you want to go deeper into these concepts, my highest recommendation is you go grab my Narrative Intelligence Mastery course. You can get it in the show notes, or just go directly trishblackwell.com/NQ. Literally, this is just scratching the surface. That course, we call it a mastery, NQ mastery, because it teaches you literally everything you need to know to rewrite, to master this skill, to implement and integrate it into your life, and to elevate from low NQ to high NQ. But one of the things I teach in that is the ARM process. It's ARMM. And it's step one of the A is to assess. You have to first identify stories that need to change. Step two is the R of ARM, which is rewire. You want to start first, identify the stories. That's our assess. So we need to assess which stories need to change. Then we need to rewire, which is we need to start creating the wiring of the new stories we actually want to believe. Then the M, we have two M's in the ARM acronym. It's to monitor, control your mental choices and your life story. And so in the NQ Mastery course, I teach you what is for each of these steps, what to do in order to do those. But it's monitoring that, then managing, which is boosting your brain and managing your mindset. And so I give you I have monitoring basics, managing basics, and habits. So for each of these within the NQ course, I have the basics of it and then the habits of it. So you can start really activating the ARM process, because once you know how to do that, then you have the framework to really on a consistent daily basis start elevating your mastery of this language, of this internal language, your NQ. So let's just say the fastest way to accelerate your NQ is to get that NQ mastery course. But let's talk about some other ways to improve your NQ. It's to catch your default narratives. How do we do that? We do that by journaling. We do that by open thinking. We do that by driving in the car and turning our radio off and being in silence and allowing yourself to be reflective and say, what am I making this mean? Is there a storyline I'm stuck in? What are my default narratives that I say about myself? What story am I believing right now? And is it helpful? A very kind of fork in the road question I ask a lot of my students is, what is the story you're telling yourself? And does that story help you or does it hurt you? Where every story takes you one of two ways. And it's up to you to go, which way is it taking me? And if it's taking you the way that hurts you, you need to change the story so it can take you to a way that will help you. So first we have to catch that default narrative, which means we have to question the story. The next thing that you can do to improve your NQ is to practice micro rewrites. This is the art of reframing. And I am going to give you a couple recommended episodes to point to and to check. But reframing is just a basic skill of confidence. I have 2 episodes I'm going to recommend. Is episode 647, reframing thoughts and beliefs, and then episode 652, rewiring negative self-talk. Those are both rewriting, right? So the process of rewriting, 2 full episodes for you on that, 647, 652. Okay, and then of course, practicing and using the ARM framework, which is again, assess, rewrite, monitor, and manage. Another thing you can do is to play mental games for your confidence. It's games like Future You or Add a Girl or Pods. They train your NQ. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you check my Instagram. I've been posting a lot more micro games recently. And of course, I have my bundle, my vault of micro games. I have 27, actually it's over 27 micro games for your confidence. They're $1 each. They're little small games you can play to give your brain mental play so that on a daily basis, without massive extensive journaling or lots of time, you can be playing a mental game that strengthens your NQ, which elevates your confidence. So that, and if you want to find out those games, check my Instagram. You'll see some of those there, or just go, I'll make sure it's linked in the show notes. Check out the games at trishblackwell.com/mind games. And then the other thing you can do is that you have to surround yourself with growth-oriented stories. So books, podcasts, coaches, communities that normalizing reframing, normalize management of the internal story, being interested in your thoughts, knowing that your thoughts are your power, that your brain is look, AI is incredible. Our phones are incredible. Your brain is better than all that. You have the world's greatest supercomputer available to you, and most of us don't use it. So make sure you're surrounding yourself with growth-oriented content. All right, so those episodes to go check out are episode 647, episode 652. And you guys, I want to tell you, next week, we have an incredible episode coming up on the cancers of confidence. I've mentioned this before, but very, very, very practical episode that's going to really change the way you think about things, why are we doing that after this episode? Because I want your awareness to be there, because those cancers of confidence, there are 3 C's. It's comparing, complaining, and criticizing. And so that we're going to dive into that next week to elevate that NQ, because once your awareness is there, now that you are aware of NQ, we can start questioning the stories when those cancers show up. Guys, thank you so much for allowing me to be a voice of encouragement in your life this week. If you haven't yet, hit follow on whatever podcast app you're listening to. Did you know about 33% of you guys that listen consistently weekly don't actually follow the show? Now, why would it be good to follow? Because when you follow the show, it automatically will pop and notify you when there is a new episode, but also it builds the algorithm in the podcast world that suggests the show to more people. So if you're just grateful to have this show in your life, and you know that somebody out there that on the other side of the world that maybe you don't know, but is a lot like you, would be grateful because their podcast recommended this to them. It popped up in their feed as they scrolled. That is what you do when you hit follow, when you leave a review. You're boosting what the podcast world thinks of this show, this episode, so that more people find it organically. And that is my greatest ask of you. This is my labor of love to serve you in this way every week. My ask that is that you make sure you are hitting follow, sharing the show, and writing a review. Guys, I can't wait to see you next week. Have an amazing week. You are a world changer and a difference maker, and your mind, it can go from messy to managed when we lean into NQ. If I can do it, you can do it. I know that for sure.